Hey, listeners. We got a super timely request from you guys. You want to really dig into the economic outlook, like what's going on, and specifically how gold and silver play into all of this.
Hmm.
And honestly, who can blame you?
Right.
It seems like every day the news throws like a whole new curveball at us about the economy.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone in thinking about gold and silver right now,
Yeah.
especially with inflation and a potential recession looming. People just naturally want to feel secure.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Total sense. And we've got a ton of research here that actually gets into why experts are calling gold and silver safe haven assets.
Hmm.
What is it about these precious metals that makes them so special during times like these?
Well, one thing is that gold and silver have this incredible history
Yeah.
as stores of value going way back
Hmm.
centuries even.
Wow.
Unlike paper money, which can be printed endlessly and lose its value,
Right.
the supply of these precious metals is finite.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's tied to something tangible.
It's like that saying they're not making more land. That's right.
But for money.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is we're seeing this play out right now in real time.
Yeah.
Central banks all over the world, especially in China, have been buying up gold like crazy.
Okay, so that's pretty compelling. Like, what's the motivation behind this big gold rush? Are they just trying to diversify their portfolios a little bit?
It is a form of diversification, but there's also like a deeper geopolitical thing going on here too.
Okay.
Some analysts think this is a sign that some countries are losing faith in the US dollar as the world's reserve currency.
Interesting.
So by loading up on gold, these countries are kind of hedging their bets,
Yeah.
getting ready for a potential shift in the balance of power when it comes to economics.
So are we talking about like a world where the US dollar is not the top dog anymore? That's kind of a big deal.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
It's definitely something economists are keeping an eye on.
Wow.
There's a lot of factors like rising U.S. debt and inflation that are feeding into this uncertainty.
But the main takeaway here is that these central banks,
Yeah.
some of the biggest players in the global economy, they're putting their money on gold.
Yeah.
And that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if we should be doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
Now, switching gears slightly, I am curious about all the mixed signals that we're getting from the economy in general.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing really strong job numbers,
Right.
but we're also seeing this slowdown in manufacturing, and the real estate market is a little shaky right now.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is a lot. And all this back and forth in the economy is showing up in what's called the NFIB Uncertainty Index,
Okay.
which basically measures how confident small business owners are feeling about the future.
Okay.
And right now, that index is a big red flag.
No.
It's at its highest point since 1975,
Oh, no.
which, if you remember, was not a great year for the economy.
1975 stagflation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, not a time period most of us want to relive.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
And this uncertainty makes understanding safe haven assets like gold and silver even more important,
Right.
especially for people who want to protect their savings.
So with all this economic uncertainty swirling around, gold and silver start to look a lot more appealing.
Mm.
But there is one thing I'm still trying to wrap my head around. We've seen the price of gold dip recently.
Yeah,
If it's such a safe haven, why the sudden drop?
that's a great question, and I know a lot of our listeners are probably wondering the same thing.
Yeah, it's something worth looking into. The recent dip in gold prices might seem kind of strange at first glance, especially with everything we've been talking about.
Right.
But it's important to remember that markets, they don't always move in a straight line, you know?
Yeah.
They go up and down, they have short-term swings and long-term trends.
So you're saying this recent drop could just be a blip?
It's definitely a possibility. It could just be a short-term thing driven by people taking profits or even just algorithmic trading, you know,
Yeah.
the computers doing their thing.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that gold is going down long term.
Not at all.
For long-term investors, these dips can actually be a good time to buy.
So instead of panicking, maybe this is the time to buy the dip, as they say.
That's a decision each person has to make for themselves,
Right.
based on their own risk tolerance and financial goals.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look back historically, gold has held its value, even when interest rates were going up like they are now.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you go back to the 1970s when inflation was really high,
Yeah.
gold prices actually went way up.
Wow. So history tells us this dip might be temporary.
History often rhymes, even if it doesn't repeat itself exactly.
Hmm.
Now, while we're talking about precious metals, let's talk about silver for a minute.
Okay.
Gold gets most of the attention, but silver has its own interesting story.
Okay.
and it might have even more potential for growth.
It's like the silver lining to the gold rush.
I like that. And one of the most interesting things about silver right now is that it's undervalued,
Yeah.
especially compared to its highest prices in the past. Back in 2011, silver hit almost $50 an ounce.
Wow.
Today, it's way lower than that, even with all this inflation we're seeing.
So you're saying there's a good chance silver could really take off in the next few years?
Oh, there are never any guarantees when it comes to investing.
Right.
But silver's current price, compared to its all-time high, plus the fact that industrial demand is increasing, makes it a very compelling case.
Okay, hold on a second. I get the historical value of silver, but what do you mean by increasing industrial demand?
That's a great question. Silver isn't just a pretty metal. It has tons of uses in really important industries.
Oh, okay.
Everything from solar panels and electronics to medical devices and even electric vehicles.
Wow, I had no idea.
Silver is a key component. And as these industries keep growing, the demand for silver will only increase.
Right.
This growing industrial demand, combined with the fact that silver is a finite resource, could really push the price up in the coming years.
So it's not just about people buying silver bars or coins anymore. It's about the underlying demand driven by all these technological advancements.
Exactly. And that's what makes silver so interesting. It's both a safe haven asset and an industrial metal. It has this unique position in the market.
So we've got gold, kind of the reliable veteran maybe telling us things are changing in the world's economy.
Right.
And then you've got silver, this rising star
Yeah,
with industrial demand making it even more interesting. It's really a fascinating dynamic.
it is. It really highlights how connected all these markets are, not just to each other, but to what's happening in geopolitics too.
It's like we're not just talking about investing anymore. We're trying to figure out what's shaping the future.
Exactly. That's what makes this so fascinating.
Yeah.
We're watching history unfold right in front of us.
Yeah.
And if we can understand these trends, even while they're just starting out,
Mm-hmm.
it can be so powerful.
Powerful is a great word. We started this deep dive wanting to understand how gold and silver could help us navigate this uncertain economy. But it feels like we've gone way beyond that.
Yeah.
We're looking at these precious metals tied to global shifts and new technologies.
That's a lot.
It's a lot to process.
But that's kind of the beauty of knowledge, right?
Totally.
It opens up these whole new ways of seeing things,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps us connect the dots in ways we never would have thought of before.
I completely agree. Speaking of connecting the dots, you mentioned earlier how central banks are diversifying their reserves with gold.
Yeah.
If these big institutions with all their resources and experts are making these moves, shouldn't we at least try to understand why they're doing it?
That's a question everyone who invests needs to ask themselves.
Yeah.
It's not about blindly following what central banks do,
Right.
but we need to realize that their actions often show a deep understanding of what's happening in the global economy.
Mm-hmm.
They have access to so much information and expertise.
Right.
So when they do something big like buying a ton of gold, it's a sign to pay attention.
It's like seeing the captain of a ship change course. You might not know what storms are coming, but you know it's time to watch out.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's about empowering yourself with knowledge.
Right.
Don't just take our word for it, or anyone else's for that matter.
Right.
Do your own research.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to financial advisors, and make choices that work for you and your risk tolerance.
Such good advice. We always say knowledge is power, and today's deep dive has definitely proven that.
Absolutely. This is a time when being informed and engaged matters more than ever.
Yeah.
The economy is always changing. But if we understand the forces at play, we can handle those changes with more confidence.
I love that. And on that note, listeners, we'll leave you to ponder these big economic questions. Hopefully you're feeling a little more informed and a lot more curious. Remember, the journey of understanding never really ends. It's about always looking for new knowledge and questioning what you think you know. Until next time, keep exploring.